Hello everybody, Solomon Clark here, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, I'm going to tell you about 10 mistakes people make when doing the bicep curl. Mistake number 1, they don't use a full range of motion. So most people who don't use a full range of motion on bicep curls will normally only do the top half of the rep. So they'll do this. More rarely, they'll do the bottom half of the rep. So they'll do this. Though in my experience, doing that is pretty rare. The problem, right, with only doing a half rep is that in most cases, most of the time, full range of motion is superior from a hypertrophy standpoint, which means building muscle, if I explain it in layman's terms. Not to mention, doing a half range of motion, only the bottom half on something like a preacher curl, would be a massively increased injury risk since there's so much weight pulling down on your bicep in the bottom position right there. With a standing curl, only doing the top half is worst because lift is generally very easy up here, so you're not really getting any stimulation. Don't get me wrong, partial reps are by far not the worst mistake you can make when bicep curling, but ideally you still want to avoid it. Number 2, and I don't know why I have to say this one, as it should be common sense, but sadly it's not, and that's swinging during the curl. So I see this all the time. Someone grabs onto a dumbbell that's way heavier than what they can actually handle, and then you get this. That's just not healthy for your back. It's a massive injury risk, and remember, training safely is all about minimizing injury. That's the bottom line. So what you want to do is stand up straight, keep your body straight, curl, let it down, and that's it. That's the correct form. You don't want to be swinging around. The second that you start swinging around, you're doing it wrong. And a good way to test if you're actually swinging or not, because you might not be aware of it, is find some wall to stand up against. See if you can still curl the weight that you use. If you normally curl a 30-kilo barbell, for instance, standing, stand against a wall and do it. You can't do it for that many reps, then, certainly you can't do it for that many reps compared to when you're just standing, then, you're probably cheating the reps. Number 3, they allow their elbows to drift forward, so they end up curling like this. Now, curling like this starts to activate the shoulder, and, it's also an injury risk because your arm's not as in a stable position anymore. And what do I say? Training safely is all about minimizing injury risk. Now, I know what you're saying. You're exaggerating the elbow drift. A little bit of elbow drift can be fine. Well, it can be. How much elbow drift is acceptable? Well, if you can move your elbow to the side and have it still touch your body, so you're curling here, this is acceptable. This is not. Look, I'm moving my elbow. It's not really touching my body properly. So keep your elbow within the confines of your body. So about this, it's a maximum elbow drift that you can have. Of course, don't aim to have that much. You want to aim to be like and have pretty much no elbow drift if you can possibly help it. Number 4 is uncontrolled negatives. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate this with the weight. Reason being is that uncontrolled negatives is a huge injury risk and I don't want to get hurt. But I will show you what people do. So what people tend to do is they'll curl it up, no issues, and then they'll just let it fall. And then you get this. You get this. Not controlling the negative at all. That's just a recipe for disaster. You're very, very likely going to injure yourself. What does a controlled negative look like? Well, I'll show you. That's it. If you're doing it any faster than that, then you're just completely neglecting the negative portion of the rep, really. Any faster than that, and you're probably going to hurt yourself. Number 5, curling your wrist up as you curl. I have to be careful of this one because it's very easy to do. Very, very easy to do, and you don't even realize you're doing it a lot of the time. So a lot of people will curl like, then just like tilt their wrist. I mean, but you can usually feel it when it does happen. Like, be mindful of it and keep that wrist more or less straight. A tiny bit of wrist curl, like with the elbow drift, is totally fine. But for the most part, you want to be keeping your wrist as straight as you reasonably can. Number 6, shrugging while you curl. And I would also say flowing your elbows while you curl and group them, because it's rare to see one without the other. In my experience, a lot of people tend to shrug up and flare their elbow like this. This happens because people trying to curl too much. This just increases joint stress. And again, as I said, time and time again, minimizing injury risk is the safest way of training. And you're definitely not minimizing injury risk by putting your shoulder in a compromised position, putting your elbow in a compromised position, and unnecessarily shrugging your traps. Number 7, not feeling the mind muscle connection. And when people don't feel it, they sometimes just blast through the reps way too quickly. And then it's much easier for other aspects of their form to break down because of that. So it looks something like this. What we actually want to do is feel the muscle working. Look, the bicep vein there. I can look at that. I can see the muscles working, slow and steady. It also makes it much harder, and muscles often benefit from increased time under tension. That's just a scientific fact. Time under tension and muscle growth have a very strong correlation, a strong positive correlation. So don't be that guy. Don't just blast through the reps, just casually, like, eh. Doing it slowly will make sure your form stays better. It's much harder, and it's going to make you grow muscle more in the long run. So just slow down. Number 8 is failing to properly stabilize yourself before you lift. Now, this is something I've seen no influencer talk about. Just think of all your favorite fitness influencers, and not one of them has talked about stabilizing yourself before you curl. And I'm not the best person to show it because this, as you can see, is pretty horrible lighting. I'm not exactly the genetically leanest individual, and my abs in this light, not exactly, not exactly that great. But anyway, I don't care. I take being strong over being lean any day, but it is what it is. And most people won't brace themselves, so their body will end up moving just too much. What you want to do is just properly stand straight, brace your core. Think of somebody punching you. Now lift. You don't move as much. Your body still might have a couple of natural jitters or some slight natural movement as you're lifting, and you're lifting fairly heavy. That's completely normal. As you can see, my body's moving very slightly, that's normal. But I'm still stable. But I'm not just too loose. And if I don't brace myself, then it's very easy for my body to move. Of course, this weight here is not that heavy. It's 7.5 kilograms, or about 17 pounds if you're American. But I mean, if you're lifting a lot heavier than that, then bracing yourself is much more important. So brace yourself. Again, going to keep your form better, and it's going to be a lower injury risk. And what have I said? Minimizing injury risk is training more safely, and you want to train as safely as you can. Number 9 is resting too long at the top of the rep. It's not such a problem at the bottom of the rep because, well, you still have to grip onto the dumbbell and there's still a little bit of tension on your bicep. But if I curl it up now, I could just rest here for a while, to be honest. Not too much tension on the bicep. And a lot of people, they'll often just do this and kind of use their body and move their elbow forward, which makes it even worse. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is grip the dumbbell, curl it up, pause briefly at the top, and then let it down. In fact, you'd be probably best off to pause briefly at both the top and bottom, but it can be for a split second, just so it's not necessarily constantly just going maybe like. Just very, very brief pauses, but make sure not to excessively rest at the top, because then you can just chill all day, especially if it's a preacher curl when you're forward like this. A lot of people do that and it just kind of defeats the purpose of the exercise. Number 10, and this one, no other influencer will tell you this. I'm the only one who seems willing to discuss this mistake, but it's arguably the worst mistake you could make when doing one of these exercises. What is it? Forgetting to breathe. So people will forget to breathe and they'll be like, that's just. You ever know why so many people pass out in these lifting fail compilations? It's because they don't breathe. When you don't breathe, it stops oxygen from going to the muscle, and it stops oxygen from going into your lungs, obviously. So you're probably going to be lifting less weight when you hold your breath. Even though it may help you to brace yourself, you can still brace yourself while breathing, and hey, rather have a very slight amount of healthy body movement rather than pass out while curling because you didn't breathe. So what you want to do is exhale when curling up and inhale on the negative. So obviously that was very exaggerated, but you can still just breathe and breathe a bit more quietly if that's what you prefer. But just, I cannot stress this enough. Breathe when you lift. So many people hold their breath and it puts them at risk of passing out and it puts them at risk of injury, and it's just not a good mistake. Well, anyways, guys, that was it. That was 10 mistakes that people make when doing bicep curls. And hopefully after this video, you know what not to do when doing bicep curls and you know how to do them properly. If there's another video that you'd like me to do, please request it down in the comment section below. And peace out.